Hi, welcome to another edition of Math with Mr. Douglas, and I've got a special guest here, my favorite web slinger. Today we're going to be looking at scatter plots. So let's get ready, and here we go. So we're looking at scatter plots today, and scatter plots are something that you might already be familiar with. And scatter plots are really important in terms of using data. And you're going to probably notice this when you eventually get into the quote-unquote real world. And you're going to be given lots and lots of data. So let's say, for instance, you were given something like this. So here's some shoe sizes and your height in inches. And you can see that when you're getting data like this, you want to make one thing be the x and one thing be the y. So here we're saying on our x-axis, we're saying that this is going to be your shoe size, and then you want to see your height, and you want to see what kind of correlation this is going to be. So when you're thinking about setting up your graph and you're thinking of scale, so there's always good things to be thinking about is what's your scale going to be for your x and your y. And remember, they can be a little bit different, right? So you don't need to have the same scale for your x and y. If you look at the y's, you're going up quite a lot there, up to 70, whereas your x's are only going up to basically 10 or so. So do kind of realize that. So maybe if I just made all of these sort of be like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14, something like that. And then up here, maybe you're going up by 5s, 10s, whatever you want to. Say you said 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, something like that. Maybe you go by 5s, who knows what you do. But basically you start kind of graphing things, and like there's 10, 70, and then there's a little bit higher, and you start basically putting some dots. What you're going to see when it's 9, it's a little bit lower. And when you start to see this, and you start to graph stuff, a little smaller like this, you start to see a trend. So when you're putting your data down on something, you're going to see certain types of trends. So what are the trends? So the trends, the first one, of course, is going to be a positive linear relationship. So that's the first one that you're going to see there, and that's what this is basically. You can see that as one thing goes up, as the shoe size goes up, your height goes up. And that makes sense intuitively, hopefully. What other trends might you have? So the other trends that you might be having, so you have that first one is that positive linear. So remember you had the positive, basically a positive relationship. You can have, we'll kind of draw them here. You can have a negative relationship, which just basically means as one thing goes up, another thing goes down. So your data would look, something like that. So positive kind of looked, something like that. You have non-linear. So number 3 would be a non-linear relationship. So that's when it's kind of not any of those two. So I'll show you one. Maybe you had one that goes like this, the data. So you have like a quadratic basically there. And then of course you have the most fun, the one that there is no relationship. There is absolutely no relationship whatsoever. It's completely random. Like, who knows what's going on there? Eventually we're going to talk about lines of best fit. So if you had to put a line through this data, how would you go and try and do that? So what would that actually look like if you had to go and do that? So that would be some kind of a quadratic probably. And over here, you couldn't do one, right? You actually could not. So those are the types of relationships between data sets that you need to be looking at and being able to use. So kind of going back to what is going to be happening. Oops, let's get rid of that. Get that back on there. So when you're given data, basically you have to go and plot it. So on your X and Y axes, and then start to interpret it a little bit. And you can even start making some guesses. Using that information to look into the future of what might happen. So this is actually really kind of an important thing. probably in your math class you'll be using paper and pencil, but we're also want to be looking at what does this look like in the real world. You obviously would be using probably some kind of a spreadsheet program. So I'm going to quickly show you what Desmos would look like. So we're starting to look at a website called Desmos.com. You can see it right there. This is a awesome website when it comes to doing graphs. I highly recommend it. So you're going to click on this kind of start graphing once you go there. And for us, when we're putting in data, so let's just say we had to go and make some kind of stuff. So I'm going to go and add a title. I guess I should create an account. Do I need to do that? Can I just sign in? I already have an account. Let's just skip that. Okay, let's imagine I'm just going to skip that. And let's just go and add something. So I'm going to click on add, and I'm going to add a table. And already you can tell by this little icon right there that you're going to be looking at a scatter plot. So again, you have your x values and you have your y values. So again, if we're looking at perhaps, maybe we're looking at height and age, maybe height and age in days or something like that. Let's take a look at maybe babies. We're looking at babies and their height. So their height related to how many days that they've been alive. So I know my kid right now, he's at, what is he at, around 90 days? 90 days, and he's at around 60 centimeters. He's growing quite nicely. Let's say earlier, when he was at day 1, how tall was he? He was like maybe 30 centimeters, I think. Oh gosh, I should know this, probably 40, I don't know. And then let's say, obviously the days on the 10th day, maybe he's at 44. Maybe on the 15th day now he's gone up a little bit, not too much. But then on the 20th day he's like, boom, I'm super tall now. And then he plateaus a little bit. So 30, and then he says like, oh, I'm only 56 now. And then 35, he's still 56. I'm getting worried. Like, oh my God, is my son going to be short? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he's not growing. What are we going to do? But then thankfully on the 40th day, he's like, boom, I've grown a little bit, and there we go. So taking a look at that, now when you come back over to here and you want to say like, so where is all of that information? So you have to zoom out a little bit, and oh hey, look, there it is. So let me zoom out there. So there is my data, which is kind of cool. So remember on my X, I went and made that the days, and then basically said, oh okay, so we have this little point way out there. So anything that looks a little bit weird, we call that an outlier. So an outlier, that's a good thing to kind of write down. And you can see there's a general positive trend, and that kind of makes sense. The number of days that you're alive, you get a little bit taller, and that probably plateaus. For guys, maybe plateaus around 18 to 20, something like that. Girls, a little bit earlier. And there you go, you start getting some trends, start making some predictions. If you wanted to add another column, you can just click over here and you can add like a Z column. You hit in Z, and then you can say, okay, so I want to know days, I have height, and I also want to know weight. So how much was he in kilograms? So the first on right now he's a hefty like 6.2 kg, and oops, there we go. And you can see it's like purple, this dot, and then on the first day he was pretty small. He was only 3 kg, and then he actually lost weight in the first couple of days, which is kind of normal. Nothing to be worried about and that sort of thing. So the doctors all tell me, you're learning so much about little kids and that kind of stuff. On the 20th day, he's been eating lots of candy. No, he's not eating candy. He's drinking lots of milk. And then, it just kind of keeps going up. So that's the basic trend. He gained a kilogram. That's insane. And it kind of goes up 5.3, 5.4, something like that. Okay. So you get all those kinds of things. And you start taking a look at what's happening here. So now you can start looking at a couple of different sets of data with the same x-axis. So still looking at days. So if you're going to be creating your own data sets, you can have one kind of independent variable, time, the days, and you can start looking at some dependent variables, a couple of different ones. So the green dots I just had here, we're looking at basically height, and then I was also looking at weight. And you can say they're both kind of positive linear relationships. It's going to go up. maybe you think of something where you'd have two things that would go opposite. One would be positive, one would be negative. That might be something interesting to try and look for when you're looking at data things. So that gives you a little bit of idea of using Desmos if you're going to start doing some plots and that sort of thing, and using this as a technology tool. You could also use Excel or Google Sheets. Lots of things out there to help you with scatter plots and graphing data. Thanks everybody for spending some time with me looking at scatter plots. Until next time, be an awesome superhero. Cheers.